Welcome back to Sleep Stories, or welcome for the first time. Before we get too cozy, let me ask you something. What really happened to Little Red Riding Hood? Not the bedtime version they told you when you were young. The real one. The version where the forest remembers you. Where the wolf speaks your name. Where the girl in the red cloak doesn't run, but stands still and listens. Tonight, we're telling that story. And before your eyes start to get heavy, do me one little favor, tap the like button now. I know most of you will be asleep before the halfway point, so go ahead and like the video early. It helps more people discover these stories, and it lets me keep creating new ones for you, every week. Now, if this isn't your first time on the channel, if you've drifted off to Hogwarts with me, if you've listened to Harry's quiet diary entries, or fallen asleep to stories under candlelight and stars, go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. You're already part of this little dream circle. Might as well make it official. And hey, let me know down in the comments, what time are you watching this? I love seeing when our stories find you. Midnight listeners, 3 a.m. thinkers, sunrise sleepers, this is your place. Tonight's story is a full-length reimagining of Little Red Riding Hood. But don't expect the usual tale. This version is part fairy tale, part dark fantasy, and entirely yours. Red is no longer just a girl with a basket, she's a guardian of ancient paths, a speaker of forgotten names, a light in the deep forest. There is mystery. There is danger. And there is a choice at the heart of it all. So tuck in, breathe deep, and let the world fall away. And when this story is done, or if you wake in the middle of the night, check out some of my other videos, especially Harry Potter's diary, a gentle, personal retelling of his years at Hogwarts, written like it was meant just for you. It's one of my favorites on the channel, and it's here whenever you need it. Now, close your eyes. Because the forest is calling. And Red is already walking the path. In the northernmost cradle of the Vale of Elder Glen, nestled between low hills and ever-thickening woods, there stood a village too small for maps and too old for time. The people there lived simple, honest lives, baking, tending livestock, raising children and burying their dead in the soft soil behind ivy-covered chapels. And though the village had no official name, travelers sometimes called it Ashridge, after the color of its stone and the scent of its hearths. But the villagers called it home, and that was enough. Among the children of Ashridge was a girl named 𝓢𝓵𝓮𝓮, though most knew her simply as Red, for the cloak she wore wherever she went, a heavy thing, dyed crimson with elderberries and lined with hand-stitched wool, passed down from her grandmother and sewn with sigils no one could quite read anymore. She was 12 when the story began, but the forest had already taken notice. Red had hair the color of burned maple leaves and eyes like river stone, soft gray, edged with steel. She was quick-witted and sharp-tongued, not in the manner of mischief but necessity. She'd grown up without a father, and her mother, Murrin, was a healer, too often away helping those beyond the far ridge. Red learned to carry herself like someone older, because childhood was a luxury not everyone in Ashridge could afford. The cloak had belonged to her grandmother, Morwenna, a woman whispered about more than spoken to. She lived deep in the forest, in a crooked cottage of stone and moss, alone save for her black cat and the herbs that hung like drying lanterns from her rafters. Some said she was a hedge witch. Others said worse. But no one denied her healing worked, nor that her bread rose higher than anyone else's. And every winter solstice, she sent Red a bundle wrapped in parchment and twine. Always something warm, and always something useful. That winter, the snow came early. It fell in pale drifts before the harvest was in, and the trees in Elder Glen grew silent, as though listening. Red's mother came to her just after dawn, a letter in hand. "Your grandmother is unwell," she said, setting the note down gently. "She says not to come, but I can hear it between the words." Red picked up the letter. The script was shaking, jagged where it had once been proud. "Do not worry. The fever passes like wind through trees. Let the wood sleep. Do not wake what watches. She looked up. "You're going, aren't you?" Her mother hesitated. "I can't. The Ashcroft twins are sick, and old Tamlin's lost his eyesight overnight. I'll send supplies, but I can't leave them now." Red said nothing. After a moment, Murrin laid a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "If you go, you must stay on the path. No matter what you hear. And wear your cloak." Red nodded, but her eye stayed on the edge of the forest beyond the frost-crusted window. She had walked to the edge before. Many times. But crossing it was something else. That evening, Murrin packed a wicker basket with fresh bread, dried sage, honeycomb, and a flask of elderflower tonic. She tied the cloak around Red's shoulders and knelt to kiss her forehead. "You are your grandmother's child more than mine," she whispered. "The woods will remember you. Walk like you belong." Red left at first light. The sky was slate grey, and the trees looked like ancient sentinels, frozen mid-breath. Her boots crunched softly along the frostbitten path. Birds did not sing. Wind did not stir. Only the occasional sigh of melting snow dropping from branches marked the passage of time. Red did not hum, nor skip, nor dawdle. She kept her eyes forward, her steps measured. She had been raised with stories of the Darkwood, the stretch of forest between Ashridge and Morwenna's cottage. It was not cursed, the villagers said, merely forgotten by the sun. Things grew too fast there. Mushrooms as wide as dinner plates. Ferns that curled like fingers. Trees that twisted around each other like lovers or jailers, depending on the season. And, of course, there were the wolves. Some said they were just wolves. Others spoke of the one with the silver pelt, who walked upright and whispered your name from the shadows. Red had never seen him. But that did not mean he wasn't there. She pulled her cloak tighter. Midday came without sun. She ate a piece of bread under a stone archway made from 2 fallen trees, their bark coated in frost. As she chewed, she thought of Morwenna, of the little charms that hung above her hearth, of the kettle always boiling, of the red ink books no one else was allowed to touch. And then, quite suddenly, the forest went quiet. Not gently, like snow drifting into stillness, but abruptly, like a curtain had dropped. Red stood. Somewhere, just ahead, a branch snapped. She turned slowly. And from between 2 ancient oaks, a shape emerged. It was tall, taller than any man she'd seen, and cloaked in shadow. At first she thought it was just a tree, or the trick of morning mist. But then it moved. Golden eyes met hers, calm and unblinking. And the wolf smiled. He stood at the forest's edge, as if he had always been there. As if the trees had parted just slightly to let him out, and might take him back again at any moment. Red did not run. Running would invite the chase. That was one of the first lessons her grandmother had taught her when she was little and afraid of shadows. If a thing wants to frighten you, Morwenna had once said, stand very still. It's much harder to scare something that isn't moving. So she stood. And the wolf did not charge, nor growl, nor bare his teeth. He only watched her. His fur shimmered in shades of silver and charcoal, as though moonlight had been woven through it, and his eyes were too intelligent to belong to a beast. Not angry. Not hungry. Just knowing. He stepped forward, slow and graceful, like water finding its path through rock. You're not afraid, he said. Red's breath caught, but she did not flinch. His voice was low and sonorous, like roots growing under earth. It wasn't truly human, but it was speech. I'm not foolish either, she answered. The wolf tilted his head. A clever tongue for one so young. I know what you are. And yet you wear red. She glanced down. The cloak hung from her shoulders like blood poured over snow. It was my grandmother's, she said. Then she should have known better, the wolf murmured. Red said nothing. The wolf paced in a slow arc, his movement silent on the frost. They used to send hunters through these woods. Men with iron-tipped spears and prayers on their lips. They always came in groups, thinking numbers would protect them. He paused. They don't come anymore. They say you tricked them. I offered them a choice. Red narrowed her eyes. What kind of choice? The wolf's smile returned, lazy and unbothered. The kind no man ever makes without regret. There was something old in him. Not just in his age, though he carried the air of something that had prowled these woods before her village had even been born. No, something older in spirit. The kind of old that waits, watches, and only acts when the time is right. She took a careful step forward. Are you going to eat me? The wolf's ears twitched in amusement. Do I look so crude? You look like stories. Ah, he said, then you understand nothing. The wind picked up slightly, stirring her cloak. The trees creaked softly. Somewhere far off, a raven croaked once and was silent. You've left the path, the wolf said gently. You should not have done that. Red turned to look, and realized, with a twist of dread, that she could no longer see it. The trail she had followed for hours, so clear behind her, had vanished into the thicket. No broken branches, no muddy prints. Just endless trees, identical and uncaring. I didn't, she began. You were meant to go straight through the hollow, the wolf interrupted. But you stopped under the arched trees. You sat, and you lingered. That was enough. Enough for what? For the forest to change, he said. It listens when you're not listening. Red swallowed hard. Then help me find it again. I already have. She blinked. What? The wolf turned his back to her, trotting a few steps toward the deeper woods. You know the old path. But the forest grows new ones all the time. He looked back over his shoulder. Come. Or don't. But the choice fades quickly. And with that, he vanished between two trees, his silver tail flicking like a ribbon behind him. Red hesitated. Every instinct screamed not to follow. Every story she had ever heard said to stay still and wait for the path to reappear, or shout until a woodsman found her. But her grandmother was sick. Alone. And the forest had already swallowed the way back. She pulled her hood up, tightened the cloak, and stepped into the trees. The new path was not a path at all. It wound like smoke, barely there, a trail marked only by the wolf's footprints, each one melting into the frost as she stepped beside it. The trees loomed taller, older, more twisted. Vines curled around trunks like veins, and pale fungi pulsed softly along the bark, glowing faintly as if alive. Time bent in strange ways. She wasn't sure if she walked for minutes or hours. Eventually, the wolf reappeared, lying on a stone just off the trail. He yawned, watching her with mild interest. You walk like a question, he said. I have questions, Red replied. Then ask. What are you? He rolled onto his back, paws in the air. Something that learned long ago not to be human. Are you a curse? Only to those who refuse to listen. She stopped walking. And what do you want from me? He was quiet for a moment, then stood. That depends. On what? On whether you're the kind of girl who finishes stories, he said, or the kind who runs from them. And before she could reply, he was gone again. This time, there was no trace at all. No paw prints. No shadow. Just a clearing ahead and, beyond it, smoke rising from a crooked chimney. Her grandmother's cottage. The forest fell utterly silent. The clearing lay still as a held breath. Red stood at its edge, watching the cottage like it might watch back. Its roof sagged gently under snow. The garden gate hung ajar, rusted hinges too frozen to creak. Ivy crawled up the stone walls, gripping like veins on a withered hand. The smoke from the crooked chimney drifted in a tight column, too perfect, too still. She stepped forward slowly, boots crunching across the frost-hardened moss. The cottage was just as she remembered, yet somehow wrong, like a painting recreated from memory by someone who'd only seen it once. Red reached the door and paused. The wood looked darker, the iron handle colder. A faded charm still hung above the threshold, a red thread braided around sprigs of rosemary and blackthorn, a charm against wolves. It fluttered faintly in the breeze, brittle and almost broken. She knocked. Silence. "Grandmother," she called. No answer. Red knocked again, louder. "Morwenna." A shuffle came from within. A shadow moved behind the frosted glass. The door opened a crack. A face peered out, Morwenna's face, pale and thin and deeply lined. But her eyes were not the same. They were too dark. Too wide. Like a reflection in glass that moves before the person does. "Eloan," the old woman rasped. "You shouldn't have come." Red stepped forward. "You're sick." "I brought medicine." Her grandmother opened the door further, and Red slipped inside. The warmth struck her first. The hearth was lit, but the flames did not flicker, just glowed, steady and unnatural. The room was filled with the smell of dried herbs and something else, something sweet and rotting beneath it, like overripe apples. Books were scattered across the floor, open and unread. The wooden table was overturned. A black cat lay stretched by the fire, watching her silently. But it did not rise, did not blink. And Morwenna moved strangely. She hunched. Yes, she was old, but it wasn't age that bent her. It was weight. As though something sat on her shoulders, invisible and heavy. "I told your mother not to send you," she said. "She didn't. I came on my own." Morwenna's lips pulled back, not in a smile but something like it. "Of course you did." Red set the basket on the table and began unwrapping the bundles. "I brought honey, tonic, some sage." "You'll stay the night," her grandmother interrupted. "It's too late to return." Red looked out the window. The sun still lingered, dim, but visible. "It's barely past midday." "Not here," Morwenna said sharply. Red frowned. Then something moved outside the window. Just for a second. A flicker. A silver shadow between the trees. She turned quickly. Nothing. Morwenna followed her gaze. "You saw him, didn't you?" Red hesitated. "Who?" The old woman shuffled to the hearth, grabbing a poker and stirring the steady fire until it hissed. "The wolf. The one who speaks." Red said nothing. Morwenna sighed, the sound full of weariness and warning. "He is not a beast. He is the forest." "I don't understand." "You will." With shaking hands, the old woman pulled something from her satchel, a bundle wrapped in violet cloth and sealed with wax. She pressed it into Red's hands. "Take this. Don't open it." "Not yet." "What is it?" "A ward. Or a weapon. Depends on who uses it." Red turned the bundle over. The wax bore a symbol she did not recognize, an eye within a circle, crossed with thorns. Morwenna looked at her with something like grief. "You were born under a waning moon. That means the forest listens to you. I thought that was just a story. All stories are true. Some just haven't happened yet." A loud knock cut the air in two. Both of them froze. It came again, 3 hard raps at the front door. Not frantic. Not polite. Measured. Heavy. Red's blood turned to ice. Morwenna's voice dropped to a whisper. "Do not answer that door." Red moved to stand behind her. The knock came again. 3 times. Then silence. Morwenna walked to the window and peered out through the frost. When she stepped back, her hands were trembling. "He's testing the walls," she said. Red's voice shook. "What does he want?" "To see if we remember. To see if we fear. To see if the old stories still breathe." The cottage suddenly felt smaller. Morwenna turned, her eyes suddenly clearer, sharper. "There is a warden who lives beyond the river bend. A hunter. He walks the border between the waking world and the one beneath it. Will he help us?" "He might. If you can find him before nightfall." Red stared. "You want me to leave? Now?" Morwenna nodded. "You'll be safer in the woods than in this house if he returns. Take the bundle. Find the warden. He wears a coat of crow feathers and carries a blade made from a fallen star. That's a legend. Everything true begins that way." Red didn't argue. She threw her cloak back around her shoulders, tucked the bundle into her satchel, and opened the door. The forest was waiting. And somewhere ahead, the warden walked the edge of dreams and danger. The cold met her like breath from a waiting mouth. The forest beyond her grandmother's clearing had changed, just slightly, just enough. Trees leaned in closer. Shadows stretched a little too far. The light that should have been soft and silver had turned pale green, as though filtered through something old and unseen. Red tightened her cloak and walked. Morwenna's words echoed in her ears. A coat of crow feathers. A blade of fallen star. It sounded like a riddle, or a lullaby too old to be sung aloud. Yet she believed her. Because the wolf was real, and the fire didn't flicker, and her grandmother's hands had trembled. The bundle thumped gently in her satchel with each step. She hadn't looked inside. Didn't dare. Not yet. She followed no path now. Just instinct and the faintest impression of something ahead. A breeze that stirred only when she walked. A sense of not being alone, but not yet being seen. And then she heard him. A sound between a howl and a hum, low and winding through the branches like a melody remembered from a dream. It was not a song. It was a signal. She turned her steps toward it. The woods thickened. Moss hung like curtains. Stones rose from the earth in patterns too deliberate to be natural. She passed under an arch made of twisted antlers, half swallowed by ivy. Then another, formed by bent trees whose bark bore claw marks that glowed faintly blue. And finally, she came to a glade that felt outside the world. The clearing was silent. No wind. No birds. Not even breath. And in the center stood a man. He wore a long coat made entirely of black feathers, stitched so tightly they rustled with each motion. His hair was dark and threaded with silver, pulled back from a face carved with shadows and lines like cracked obsidian. His eyes were pale, not blue or gray, but empty, like someone who had stared too long into the heart of things that should not be seen. A long blade hung across his back, sheathed in what looked like bark and bone. He looked at her, not surprised. "You've come late," he said. Red straightened. "Are you the warden?" "I was." "What does that mean?" "It means I haven't yet decided if I'll be that for you." Red didn't flinch. "My grandmother sent me." "Morwenna." A flicker of emotion passed Ked. "Seals?" He crouched and drew a symbol in the snow with one gloved finger, a circle of 7 stars, a line through its heart. "This forest is older than your village. Older than language. It remembers the things it was told to forget. The wolf is just one of them." "But what is he?" The warden stood, brushing snow from his hand. "He is the shape of hunger. The voice of temptation. He is what the forest becomes when no one keeps watch. Can you fight him?" Not alone. Red stepped forward. Then let me help. He studied her. You're the girl in the red cloak, he said quietly. The one the story said would come again. I'm just trying to save my grandmother. Then you're more dangerous than you know. A sound broke the stillness. Not loud, but wrong. Like something heavy exhaling in the distance. The warden turned his head sharply. He's coming. Red reached into her satchel and pulled out the bundle. My grandmother gave me this. Said it was a ward. Or a weapon. He took it from her, unwrapping it slowly. Inside was a small object, a glass heart, filled with coiled red thread, sealed with wax at both ends. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat caught in amber. The warden's expression darkened. This is her final tether. She's giving you her place. What do you mean? Morwenna was a guardian of the outer path. She kept the forest bound to its rules. But she's growing weak. That magic has to pass to someone. He held the heart out to her. She chose you. Red stared at it. But I'm just a girl. The warden's voice was soft. So was she, once. The glass felt warm in her palm. The heartbeat inside it matched her own. Suddenly, the shadows of the trees pulled back, just a little. A breeze shifted the snow. And from the edge of the clearing, a voice slid like oil across her skin. Little Red. The wolf had arrived. He emerged from the trees like a shadow stepping free from its master. The wolf, if it could still be called that, was more than fur and fang. He walked upright now, his long limbs clothed in moonlight and mist, his silver pelt rippling with each silent step. His eyes were still gold, but they burned brighter than before, twin lanterns in the dark, gazing not at Red but through her, as if he could see the shape of her soul. The warden stepped forward, his feathered coat rustling, blade sliding from its sheath with the hiss of cold steel drawn from stone. The wolf's mouth curved into a grin, not of delight, but of recognition. Ah, he said, in a voice like velvet woven with teeth. The bird returns to its cage. The warden didn't blink. You've stepped too close, Grey. The pact is still binding. Only until the last of the blood forgets the vow, the wolf murmured, padding forward. And he gestured with a tilt of his head toward Red, is just young enough to forget. Red felt the words crawl over her skin like ants. She clutched the glass heart tighter in her palm, its pulsing warmth rising with her heartbeat. She remembers, the warden said coldly. The wolf tilted his head, studying her. Do you? Do you know what that pretty little trinket is? What it means when it hums in your hand? It's a ward, Red said, her voice steadier than she expected. It's a cage, the wolf replied softly. A prison carved from sacrifice and memory. Your grandmother poured her name into that thing so the trees would bend when she whispered. But what do you have, little girl, that the forest should obey? Red felt her jaw tighten. We'll see. Indeed, the wolf said, and then he simply turned and vanished, swallowed whole by the dark. The warden lowered his blade. That was a warning, he said quietly. The next time, he won't leave. Red swallowed and looked at the glass heart again. What do I do? We go back, the warden replied. The seals need to be restored. And if he's already testing the cottage, your grandmother may not last the night. They moved quickly, retracing Red's silent trail through the frost-veiled forest. The trees seemed to part for the warden, opening passages where none had been before. She noticed, as they passed, that the markings on some of the trunks, the symbols that glowed with faint blue light, were flickering now, like candles running low on wax. Those are the wards, she asked. He nodded. The old ones. Placed by hands long dead. They don't last forever. Especially when no one tends them. Red touched the glass heart through her cloak. Will this fix them? No, he said. But it will let you make new ones. By the time they reached the clearing, the sun had vanished, and in its place was that eerie half-light that lives between dusk and true night. The cottage windows glowed faintly, but something in the quality of the light was wrong, too still, too white, like the light of a lantern with no flame. Red was the first to reach the door. She knocked once, then again. No answer. The warden pushed it open without waiting. Inside, the air was heavy and warm, almost humid. The fire still burned, but it did not crackle. It pulsed in time with something deeper, something underneath the floor. The black cat had vanished. The books were no longer scattered, but neatly stacked, too neatly. The kind of neatness that comes not from care, but from imitation. And sitting in the high-backed chair near the hearth was Morwenna. Or something wearing her face. "Grandmother," Red said quietly. The figure turned, slowly. Her skin was pale as bone now, her eyes darker than ink. She smiled too wide. "Eloan," she said, voice smooth and honeyed, but hollow. "You found your way back." The warden stepped in front of Red, sword drawn. "That's not her," he said. The thing that wore Morwenna's skin laughed, and the sound was cold and echoing. "Poor man," it said. "Still playing sentinel for a forest that forgets your name." Red moved past him. "What did you do with her?" "She opened the door," the creature said with a shrug. "That was all I needed." Red stepped closer, heart pounding, and as she did, her hand brushed the mirror that hung above the hearth, a tarnished thing she remembered from childhood, shaped like an oval with thorns carved into the frame. She hadn't thought of it until now. But something inside it flickered. She looked up and saw the truth. The reflection in the mirror was not Morwenna. It was a twisted shadow, lank and long-limbed, draped in the skin of her grandmother. Its mouth was too wide. Its eyes were holes. It sat not in a chair, but on a nest of bones and roots, pulsing with red light. Red gasped, and the creature snapped its gaze to the mirror. Too late. The warden lunged, blade flashing silver. The creature shrieked, rising from the chair like a marionette yanked by unseen strings. Its flesh twisted and shimmered, revealing flickers of the wolf's true shape beneath. "Run," the warden roared. But Red didn't run. She stepped toward the mirror and raised the glass heart. It pulsed now, not gently, but fiercely. She pressed it against the glass, and the mirror rippled like water. The reflection screamed. The heart grew hot in her hand. And then it shattered. The mirror cracked down the middle. The room groaned. The fire roared to life, and the creature howled as if dragged by unseen hooks. Its borrowed flesh peeled back. Smoke poured from its eyes. It thrashed, slammed against the walls, and then, with a sound like a tree breaking, it burst into ash and vanished. Silence returned. The warden knelt where the chair had been. "She's gone," he said softly. Red dropped to her knees, trembling. "No. She can't be." "She gave everything," he said. "To hold him off. To give you time." Red reached down into the ash and found a single red thread, still warm, coiled like a question mark in the soot. She picked it up, closed her hand around it. "She's not gone," she whispered. "She's in me now." The warden nodded once. "You've inherited her burden." And when Red looked up, the room no longer seemed as small. The fire was flickering naturally now. The books were back to their usual mess. The air was lighter. The false presence had fled. But the forest was still out there. And the wolf had not finished his hunt. That night, the wind did not howl. It whispered. Soft and constant, like breath on the back of her neck. The walls of the cottage creaked with uneasy dreams, and Red sat by the hearth, unable to sleep, unable to weep. The red thread in her hand no longer pulsed. It was cold now. Quiet. Waiting. The warden dozed near the door, his feathered coat drawn around him like the wings of some ancient bird long forgotten. He did not sleep deeply. His sword remained across his lap, fingers curled around the hilt even in rest. Red watched the fire. Not because it comforted her, but because it reminded her something was still alive. She could feel the forest watching. It was no longer a passive place. The woods had awakened, as if stirred by the wolf's return, or perhaps by her own becoming. Trees did not sway when there was no wind. Roots did not shift beneath floorboards when there was no storm. And yet, something moved beneath them now. Sometime past midnight, the warden opened his eyes. "He's close," he said. Red didn't need to ask who. She stood. "Then we meet him." The warden watched her for a long moment. "You've changed." "I don't feel different." "You will. And when you do, don't be afraid of what you find." They left the cottage without speaking again. The stars were hidden. The moon was pale. The trees stretched overhead like ribs, and the path they walked was not a path at all. Just a direction, a knowing in Red's feet that she was being drawn to something. Or summoned. They passed through a grove where every tree had been split down the center, hollowed and burned, yet still growing. They stepped over a creek that ran black with melted frost, the surface so still it looked like glass. At one point, they found a circle of stones where a deer's antlers lay buried in salt, untouched by scavengers or time. And when they reached the clearing, they knew it was his. The ground was soft and wet beneath their feet, as though it had only just thawed. Mist curled low to the earth, thick and silver. In the center stood a tree unlike the others, tall, white, smooth-barked. No leaves. No branches. Just a trunk that stretched up like a bone jutting from the earth. The wolf stood beside it. Not as a man. Not as a beast. But something in between. His eyes glowed. His breath clouded the air, rising in spirals. When he spoke, the world seemed to tilt slightly toward him. "You came." Red stepped forward. "I came to end this. Then you'll need to understand what it is first." The warden raised his blade. "Don't listen." But Red didn't look away. "Tell me." The wolf smiled. "Long ago, before stories were carved into skin and stone, before your village was anything more than smoke and firelight, there was a child who walked into the woods wearing red." Red's hands tightened into fists. "She was not brave," he continued. "She was not strong. She was curious. And she asked the forest to speak to her. So it did." His voice darkened, softening like velvet soaked in ink. It offered her a place, between the teeth and the silence. And she said yes. She became the first Red. The one who made the pact. The one who wore the cloak as both warning and welcome. She bound me then, not with strength, but with choice. He stepped closer, slow and graceful. And now you stand here, wearing her name. You carry the blood, and the thread, and the key. The seal weakens. You can open it. You can let me out. Red blinked. "Why would I?" "Because the forest is dying," he said. "Because your grandmother is gone. Because your world has no wardens left, only fences that rot and stories that no one believes. But you could make something new. And let you rule it. Not rule. Shape." The warden stepped between them, sword raised. "She won't make the same mistake." The wolf's eyes glinted. "But she already has. She came here." The ground beneath them rumbled. Red looked down and saw that the mist was rising, faster now, wrapping around her boots, her legs. The white tree cracked, a long scar splitting its surface from base to sky. The wolf stepped closer. "You think I'm the only thing behind the seal," he said. "I'm the voice. The shape. But they are the teeth." "Then what are you?" Red asked. He paused. And then, softly, "I'm the part of you that wants to run with them." The mist erupted. Shapes surged from the woods. Black, slick-limbed things with hollow eyes and mouths like gaping wounds. The warden shouted, swinging his blade, cutting through them as they surged like water. Red fell back, clutching the thread in her hand, trying to remember something, anything. The heart was gone. but the thread remained. She wrapped it around her fingers. She felt the pulse of it return. And in that moment, she saw it, not just the wolf, but the forest itself. The old stories etched in roots. The forgotten names whispered into bark. Her grandmother's hands, stained with ink and blood, sewing the original words. And she saw herself, not as a girl, but as a line in a much longer story. She raised her hand and spoke. Not loudly. Just clearly. No. The mist froze. The shadow screamed. And the thread in her hand blazed to life, red as flame. The wolf lunged, teeth bared. But the warden was faster. His blade, now lit by the same red light, found its mark. The wolf shrieked, once, long and low. And then crumpled into mist. The clearing fell silent. The tree, cracked and smoking, groaned, and then settled. Red fell to her knees, shaking. The warden stood over her, panting. You bound him. No, Red whispered. We did. And the thread, still warm, curled around her wrist like a mark. Not a cage. Not a leash. But a seal. Of her choosing. The frost had lifted by morning. Not melted, lifted. As if some great breath had passed through the forest and taken all the stillness with it. The trees no longer watched. The soil no longer pulsed. And the light that filtered through the canopy was soft and golden, the way sunlight should be, honest and warm. Red woke slowly. She was still in the clearing, lying beneath the pale tree, though it no longer looked like bone. The crack running through its trunk had closed during the night, and fresh shoots now curled up from its base like green veins returning to a limb long numb. The warden sat nearby, his back to a mossed stone, blade laid across his lap. His head bowed, not in sleep, but in thought. His coat of crow feathers stirred gently in the wind. Red sat up. Everything ached. Her hands, her chest, her bones. But the red thread was still wrapped around her wrist, glowing faintly like an ember in the ashes of a fire. It no longer pulsed. It hummed. Quiet and steady. Like breath. The warden looked at her. You woke it, he said. The seal? No, he shook his head slowly. The forest. Red touched the tree's trunk. It feels different. He remembers now. There was silence between them for a moment. Birds called in the distance. Real birds, not the whispers of something pretending to be them. A squirrel darted through the leaves nearby. For the first time in days, or weeks, or however long this had all truly lasted, it felt like the woods had returned to their rhythm. But not unchanged. Red rose to her feet, steady now. The cloak around her shoulders was no longer the dull red of cloth passed down, it had deepened. Rich, blood-warm, threaded through with darker crimson that shimmered faintly in the light. It fit her differently. As though it had been sewn for her all along. The warden stood, too. He seemed older now. Not worn. Fulfilled. She passed it on, he said. Your grandmother. Red nodded. I felt it when I held the heart. Her name was still echoing inside. She didn't just pass the power, she passed the burden. Red looked toward the trees. She didn't want me to fight, she said softly. She wanted me to understand. And you did, the warden said. That's why the wolf fled. That's why the others broke. They feed on blindness. On forgetting. You remembered. But he's not dead, she said. Is he? No, the warden admitted. You can't kill the hunger. You can only bind it. Remind it of its place. Of your place. Red looked down at her hands. Then what happens now? The warden walked past her, toward the edge of the clearing. Now you choose. Choose what? Whether to return to the village, he said, not turning around, or remain as what you've become. She took a breath. Which is? The new keeper of the outer path. The one who walks both light and shadow. The one who knows the wolf and still chooses the fire. He looked back at her, eyes not sharp, but calm. The forest remembers you now, 𝓢𝓵𝓮𝓮𝓹. It listens when you walk. Red stepped to the edge of the clearing. The path back to the cottage was there, newly formed, winding but clear. The air carried the scent of pine and earth. But something inside her knew she could never walk it the same way again. Still, she had a duty. To bury her grandmother. To tend the cottage. To speak the names that kept the seals strong. She turned to the warden. "Will you stay?" He smiled faintly. "My time here is done." The stars shift. The blade returns to rest. "I was the sentinel. You are the song." Red nodded. And then she walked, back toward the cottage, the trees parting gently with each step, the cloak whispering against her heels like wings. Behind her, the white tree stood tall once more. The forest did not sleep. But it watched her now as one of its own. Seasons passed, but time in the forest did not move like it did in the world beyond the pines. It bent gently around the trees, curved through roots and whispered beneath moss, unfolding not in hours or days but in the length of shadows, the bloom of mushrooms, the stillness between storms. To the villagers, the forest still loomed as it always had, a dark line on the horizon, full of stories and warnings. But to Red, it was no longer a place to fear. It was a place she knew. She buried her grandmother beneath the rowan tree behind the cottage. No headstone. Just a circle of red thread laid gently across the soil, a sprig of dried wolf's tongue tucked into the center. The forest bore witness. Ravens circled silently overhead, and the wind hummed in the leaves like a low, reverent song. Afterward, she lit the hearth again. She scrubbed the floors. She restocked the jars, boiled the kettle, wrote in the old books that had once seemed forbidden. The ink stained her fingertips, and the smell of herbs clung to her hair. Villagers began to send letters again, slipped into knotholes, tied to stones, hidden beneath toadstools near the boundary line. At first, they asked only for tonics. Then, slowly, they asked for protection. Red answered all of them. Each morning, she walked the forest paths with the red thread tucked into her satchel and her senses open. She could feel the trees now, not just as obstacles or shade, but as something alive. Their roots whispered secrets in her dreams. Their branches guided her toward places that needed mending. She carved wards into bark, planted new sigils in the frozen earth, sang to the seals in the old language her grandmother had taught. Engel's silver hair on her doorstep curled like smoke. But he did not cross the seal. He knew who walked the path now. One spring evening, she stood at the edge of the forest where it met the fields and watched a child from the village gather wildflowers. The girl wore a green ribbon in her hair and hummed a tune Red remembered from her own childhood. The child paused at the edge, looked into the woods, and smiled. Not afraid. Just curious. Red stepped from the trees. The child startled at first, then brightened. "Are you the witch?" she asked. Red smiled. "No," she said gently. "Just the keeper." The girl blinked. "What do you keep?" Red knelt, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The stories. The seals. The balance. The path. The child thought for a moment. "My mother said you used to be someone else." "I did." "What changed?" Red looked up at the sky, where the light faded through the treetops in soft gold. "I remembered who I was meant to become." The child nodded solemnly, as if she understood, and ran off toward the village. Red watched her go, then turned back into the trees. The forest welcomed her. It knew her name. And though the wolf still waited somewhere in the dark, somewhere beyond bark and breath and story, he no longer hunted. Because Red no longer ran. She walked. She watched. She kept. And the forest, at last, was at peace. The end. And so, dear dreamer, our story finds its ending, quietly, like the last ember in the hearth curling into ash. You followed Red through frost and fear, through tangled paths and silent glades. You watched her grow from a girl with a basket into something more, a keeper, a guardian of stories, a voice the forest chose to listen to. You saw her face the wolf not with a sword, but with memory, and courage, and the will to understand, not simply destroy. Once, Little Red Riding Hood was a tale of danger, of wandering too far and being swallowed whole. But tonight, you've heard a different version. One where the forest is not just wild, but wounded. One where the wolf is not just evil, but ancient. And one where the girl in the red cloak learns that she is not prey, but protector. She did not escape the forest. She became part of it. So if you find yourself, someday, walking a path that twists through shadow, if you feel eyes watching, or catch the scent of moss and rain and something older than time, remember this story. Remember that you, too, can be brave. Not because you're unafraid, but because you keep walking anyway. Now close your eyes and let the forest sleep. Red is watching the path tonight. And all is well. Good night. Oh, still awake? That's all right. Some minds wander longer than others. And sometimes, the stories we tell are just the beginning. Let me tell you about something most people never see, not because it's hidden, but because they stop looking too soon. There's a place, far beyond the forest paths that even Red forgot to walk. Deeper than the river roots, past the old standing stones and the hollow hills, there's a clearing bathed in silver light. And at the very center of that clearing, there stands a tree. Not a wide tree. Not a tall one. But a quiet one. Its bark is smooth, like brushed moonstone. Its branches curve upward like arms offering something. And from every branch, hang lanterns. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Glass globes, paper shells, carved crystals. Some are round as marbles, others long and twisting like icicles. They sway gently even when there's no wind. And each one glows, with a different color, a different feeling. Soft green. Sleepy gold. Lonely blue. Hopeful pink. No one quite knows who first found the lantern tree. Some say it grows only for those who need it. Others whisper it appears only when you're too tired to keep walking, but too stubborn to lie down. But everyone agrees on one thing. If you sit beneath it, quietly, with your eyes closed, one of the lanterns will begin to glow just a little brighter than the rest. And when it does, it means the tree has chosen you. They say when your lantern glows brighter, it doesn't fall or flicker. It simply follows you, drifting behind like a firefly made of memory. No string. No weight. Just light. And here's the strange part, once it chooses you, it knows where to go. It follows you through the trees without ever getting caught. It stays close when you're afraid. It warms your hands if the night gets too cold. And when you sleep, that's when it shines the most. Because that's when it does its real work. It doesn't chase away nightmares with noise or fire. It doesn't fight or flash. It just glows. Gently, until whatever darkness was hiding in your thoughts forgets why it came. You won't dream of falling, or forgetting, or being lost. You'll dream of soft hills and quiet paths. Of laughter you haven't heard in a while. Of someone you miss smiling back at you. And if you wake before the sun rises, and you turn over in bed, you might just catch a glimpse of your lantern there in the corner of your room, hovering, pulsing like a heart at peace. Some say it disappears with the morning. Others say it stays with you forever, just too quiet to see in daylight. But those who have seen it? They never forget. Because that kind of light only finds you once. Not everyone keeps their lantern. Some lights fade over time, quietly, gently, once they've done what they were meant to do. Maybe the dream changes. Maybe the dreamer grows. Or maybe, just maybe, the person no longer needs the light, because they've become it. And when that happens, when a lantern finishes its watch, it doesn't fall. It rises. Softly. Slowly. It floats upward through the trees, past the moonlit leaves, into a sky painted with stars. And there, it becomes part of something bigger. A constellation made not of fire, but of dreams kept safe. A sky full of stories that once needed protection, now watching over others. Somewhere out there, above the clouds and the wind and the tall, tall trees, is a place where all the lanterns go. A quiet place. A warm place. And if you ever look up at night and see a star blink just a little slower than the others, it might not be a star at all. It might be someone's dream. Still glowing. Still listening. Still waiting for the next dreamer to fall asleep. So, if your eyes are heavy now, if the forest is quiet and the story has faded and your room feels a little softer than before, that just might be your lantern, watching from the dark. Good night, little dreamer. Sleep well. Your light is safe here. And that's the end of the lantern tree. If you made it this far, you're either still awake or drifting just beneath the surface of dreams. Either way, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, there's a whole library waiting for you here on Sleep Stories, from magical forests and forgotten kingdoms to whispered diaries from the halls of Hogwarts. If you haven't already, tap that subscribe button and turn on notifications. That way, you'll never miss the next quiet adventure. And if there's someone else in your life who could use a little peace tonight, maybe share this story with them too. Now, close your eyes one last time. Your lantern is glowing. And sleep is near. Good night, and sweet dreams.